When I was a young boy, I wanted to sail around the world. It's Monday. It's time to take out our sextant. Sextant. Get out our compass and chart our course for the week. It is time to take a look at the tabletop role-playing game news stories that are going to shape this second to last week of November as we begin the countdown to the end of one of the most controversial years in tabletop role-playing game history in quite a while. I am your GM Grumpy McGrump bah humbug guide to all the tabletop role-playing game news, weather, and general internet nonsense. It's 9:02 in the morning on this, a very windy 27th day of November 2023. It is bright, it is sunny, it is dry, but if you listen very carefully, you can hear those 22 mile per hour winds rushing through the artificial canyon that is where I live. You know, with all these houses basically lined up right next to each other and directly across from each other, it sort of creates an artificial canyon, and the wind just rushes through here, and it's like living in the desert. It's just instead of tumbleweeds, I see trash cans and old people flow by, but still, same basic thing. All right, so is there anything going on in the world of tabletop role-playing game that doesn't involve Wizards of the Coast this Monday? Let's take a look. Seems like we have another revisit to Keep on the Borderland coming up. This is called Empires on the Borderland. It comes to us through a third-party publisher. So once again, somebody is taking Keep on the Borderlands and expanding upon it. A while back, I was like, oh, you know what the most number one cribbed, repeated tabletop role-playing game product is? It's probably Tomb of Horrors, right? I mean, how many Tomb of Horror ripoffs are there? But then, you know, after being educated, I realized, no, I'm wrong. It's Keep on the Borderlands. Keep on the Borderlands is the most cribbed, repeated setting ever, I would say, right? So it looks like there's another one coming out called Empire of the Borderlands to explain further on the world of Keep of the Borderlands. Got some end of the year product coming out. Looks like there's a second edition for Ultraviolet Grasslands coming out. So if you're a fan of the Ultraviolet Grasslands, check it out. Looks like there's a new version coming out from Luke. Did you know Ultraviolet Grasslands has its own soundtrack on Spotify? I'm sure there are other tabletop role-playing games that have it, but that's the only one I'm aware of. We've got this week's freebies, sales, charity bundles, a bunch of Cyber Monday sales going on. Drivethrough being the biggest I know of, but just assuming that if there's a game out there that you want to pick a copy of, just go to that company's site and see what kind of markdowns they're running this week. There's a new version of the Adventure Time tabletop role-playing game coming out. It was previously going to use a new system called Yes And, but now it is converting to 5e. Is Adventure Time a better setting for the 5e engine than Dungeons and Dragons? Well, let's face it, most settings are a better setting for the 5e engine than Dungeons and Dragons. The 5e engine does not emulate what we think D&D is, but it emulates a lot of other things. So Adventure Time, with its Saturday morning cartoon wackiness, might be a perfect setting for the 5e engine. All right. Wow. Okay, that's it. How come you only pander to Wizards of the Coast every week, OGGM? Well, because every other tabletop role-playing game is smarter than them. It manages to avoid negative press 90% of the time. Wizards of the Coast can't help it, no matter what they do. Wake up this morning, shower, go to the bathroom, eat my breakfast, negative press. Just do something stupid. So Wizards of the Coast has tumbled out yet another collection of stupidity over the weekend. We have the latest update on the physical edition of the Deck of Many Things that has been delayed until sometime in 2024. So between January 1st, 2024 and December 31st, 2024, Wizards of the Coast guarantees you most likely the physical version of the Deck of Many Things will be available to you. And once again, they're claiming it's the cards. We can't get the cards to print the way we want them to print. Never mind, for the past 30 years, that's literally been the core of Wizards of the Coast, is making cards. Well, they're oversized. We can't do it. We're having trouble finding a printer. You've done oversized cards before. You've done novelty oversized cards pretty much with every run. There's enough oversized cards that you have made that you could make a 60-card Magic the Gathering deck just with oversized land and oversized cards. Don't say it isn't true. I've seen it done. So that is not your excuse. Well, the printers can't meet up with our expectations. You have been printing cards for 30 years. You're telling me in 30 years you have not been able to find a printer that can do this? You literally do it weekly. So is it truly that the physical product is having so much trouble getting printed out? Could it be the amount of negative press that Mackenzie generated up for you? I noticed that we're no longer talking about Deck of Many Things. We've moved on. Could it be that you are looking at the sales and realizing it's not meeting the sales physically? So you're like, we're not going to actually make the physical product until we actually have enough sales to make it worth our while, then we break even. I don't know, but I think we can't make the cards excuse is running pretty thin. We also know Wizards of the Coast has decided to correct the way we think, gently caressing our brains and changing the wording in all the upcoming books. And if you think you're safe, nope, they've gone into the D&D Beyond books and changed those too. So whatever you have on rent in your D&D Beyond monthly account, they've changed the wording. Now, fine, whatever, updating the words to the more common 2024 nomenclature, meanings of words have changed, new words have entered the education, language, words have left the language. That doesn't mean what we thought it meant, so let's change it. That's fine. That's fine. We've got a new edition now. It's a good time to re-edit it and stuff like that. So yeah, that part was fine. But the changing the meanings to be less insulting. We changed barbarian because people found barbarian insulting. So we changed it to unruly savages, which is far worse. We don't have any evil anymore. They're vile now. Vile, because vile will hurt less feelings than evil. Even though if you look up the definition of vile, it's much worse. So not only did they change the words and do our thinking for us and tell us the way we think and feel and react to the game is wrong and we now have to change it, but every word they chose to replace the no words was worse, was more insulting. My favorite, of course, being settled. Civilization implies something bad, that the white man came in and changed the country for the better. No. We want settled instead, because settled is better than civilization. I am sure the native indigenous species of people who live where you are now are very happy to know that they were not civilized. They were settled instead. Oh, you came in and settled us. Oh, we didn't know that. I mean, other than the fact you kicked us off our land, drove us into poverty, stole our culture, drove us to almost death. But thank you for settling us. The Romans came in and settled. They didn't bring civilization. They settled. Oh, those roads we built, that's part of us settling. No, not better. Well, Wizards couldn't stop there because apparently, according to our friend Tanker over at Tanker's Tavern, Wizards of the Coast has changed what Rule 0 means. So last night, Tanker over at Tanker's Tavern put up a video where he's talking about how Wizards of the Coast changed Rule 0. And the product he's talking about is the latest free product from Wizards of the Coast. It's called Peril in Pine Book. It is a freebie up on the site today or yesterday. And if you go down here to the very bottom of page 4, it says Rule 0. Rule 0 is simple. Rule 0 is have fun. It's fine if everyone agrees to change the rules, so as long as doing so means the game is more fun for everyone. So how is that different than the previous Rule 0? Well, if you look up the definition of Rule 0 on the interweb, it is pretty much agreed upon that the Rule 0 is every tabletop role-playing game system has a Rule 0. It usually goes like this. The game master may change, modify, ignore, or add to the rules as he or she fits to ensure the game is fun and runs smoothly. That means that if you are not sure about what the rules are for a situation, make something up. Okay? And now we are saying that this is different. Now, the new Rule 0 is it's fine if everyone agrees to change the rules as long as doing so means the game is more fun to everyone. And that is different than if you're not sure about what the rules are for a situation, make something up as long as the game is fun and runs smoothly. So we're angry because they're changing Rule 0, which doesn't really exist. Okay, nowhere is Rule 0 set in stone. It has always been well, yeah, kind of. I mean, Gygax talks about it in the older Dungeon Master's Guide, but it's not like the Supreme Court and the ruling council of gaming came down and inscribed on the 10 gaming commandments that this is Rule 0. It's just sort of agreed upon that if we don't know something or we don't understand something, the DM will make a ruling on it. And if we all are like, yeah, okay, that will be the ruling going forward. I think the problem is the person who wrote this is confusing Rule 0 and Session 0, which are two different things. So Session 0 is usually when we all sit down and the DM says, I want to run, I don't know, a campaign where you're all kobolds serving a dragon master. And everybody who comes to the game either goes, yeah, that's great. That's so much fun. I've got a great idea to kobold. Or they go, yeah, no, I don't really want to play that. And the DM goes, well, there goes that idea. How about, and then once they all agree that what they're going to play, then the next step of Session 0 is coming up with if there's something we don't understand, if there's a rule we want to change, maybe you want to get rid of, change the way criticals work in your kobolds game. Or maybe you want to add a new class that isn't official, or make, change magic to be more chaotic because it's kobolds. That's what you agree upon. That's everything you work on. It's Rule 0. Character background. If there's rules the DM wants to change, you're all like, yeah. And then the game starts. And then once the game starts, then it's like, well, if something comes up during the game I don't understand, well, I'll, acquiesce to the DM, and the DM will say, okay, there's no specific rules that I can find on wall climbing. Actually, I'm probably sure there is. That's just the first thing that came to mind. So I'm going to make up a rule. Or, you know what? I don't like the way that critical rule works. Let's change it to be more appropriate to kobolds, okay? So mid-game, something comes up we don't understand or isn't clear. It is usually the DM goes, all right, let's change that. And maybe everybody else throws in ideas or whatever. You don't want to really break down the game too much. So usually it's just DM come with something on the spot and we'll talk about it later. And then the game comes to an end. And then whatever. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, this gives the players, here's DM Kurt saying, well, what this is basically saying, if during the game something happens, the player doesn't like something, he can go, I don't agree with that. And if one person says no and everybody else says yes, that is basically giving that person the ability to overrule. And everybody else going, well, we have to do what this guy says because he was the one person who disagreed with the way that ruling works. Again, Session 0 says, okay, we're going to agree upon everything. And then the game starts going. And then this happens. And then everybody's like, yeah, you're right. The rule for that doesn't make sense. Let's change it. And everybody's like, yeah, okay, I'm fine with that. Let's change it. And then the one person, everybody either agrees, or the one person says, I don't agree. So is what this rule is saying in Perils of Prime Book, that if one person disagrees, you have to bring the game to a halt until we decide what's that thing. So the DMs are now like subsurface to the whims of the player. Now, if one guy disagrees and everybody else agrees, that would be like, hey, can we talk about this after the game's over? And for now, just run with it. Oh, but my character's dead. Well, it's 5e. Being dead in 5e means nothing. Take a nap, eat a sandwich, you're fine. And then, it's another version of X cards. We're complaining that we think it's taking the power away from the DM by allowing players to say no. Now, if every player goes, no, I completely disagree with that, then you'd have to revisit Session 0. If one player comes up and goes X card, and every other player is like, no, we're fucking fine with that, Phil. Well, maybe it's time for Phil to find a new game. So it feels to me like this person is mistaking session 0 with rule 0. And rule 0 is basically, if I don't understand something or we don't agree upon something, we're going to acquiesce to the DM and then we talk about it later, because we don't want to interrupt the game to break down into an hour conversation about what it does or does not say on page 57, because I've seen that happen and nobody wants that. So is this taking power away from the DM? Oh, I mean, I guess it's Wizards, so if you don't do it, the Pinkertons will show up. I mean, is it the Hasbro police meme again? You're playing D&D wrong, so the Hasbro police show up at your door and go, no? Is it, if every player, every game is doing, no, fuck you, I don't want it to work like that, because even though we agreed upon it on session 0, we're now playing this new rule 0 where we're not having fun. Well, maybe it's time for the DM to go, well, fuck you guys, get out of my game. I'm going to find a new group. Or it's up to have a session 0 again where you all sit down and go, okay, let's talk about this, because this is happening every week. And if people are just abusing it because of the whole stupid Ginny D X card thing, and they feel, oh, well, my agency as a player is being taken away, and rule 0 says I can, in the middle of the game, bring a game X card, bring a game to a halt, stop everybody else's fun because I don't like what happened, because now I feel my agency has been stopped. And again, it's time for every player to take the break to talk about this. And if every player agrees, then change the game, but don't interrupt the game. And if this is going to be used as another version of X card to just take power away from the DM, then of course it's wrong. And I feel most DMs who actually play this game or any version of the game, and then most of the players who actually play the game, aren't going to follow this. I've only seen the X card ever used twice. I have my own story about the X card where, I basically did what I thought I was supposed to do and got shit on. But that's not the game's fault. That's people. People suck, man. And people are going to abuse you. It's not because the X card idea, was stupid, which it is. It's because people are stupid. So Grumpy Grimmick Grump Wizards of the Coast is changing D&D. It's not the D&D I love. I don't want to play D&D. Well, most of us don't play D&D anymore, and most of the people who actually do play D&D have stopped paying attention to what Wizards of the Coast is doing. Now, I think it's safe to say that since I live in Southern California, I'm in probably one of the most liberal, leftist, wishy-washy places there are. So you would think the players down here would be 100% behind every single solitary thing that Wizards of the Coast says, because California is wishy-washy, leftist, woke. Now, I can't speak for anybody else's experience with 5e. I can only speak with my personal experience with 5e. And while I have had a lot of bad experiences in 5e with individuals, for the most part, based upon the last couple of 5e games I've played in, the 5e players that I know in wishy-washy, liberal, woke Southern California dislike the changes that Wizards of the Coast is making to the game as much as the other people on the other side, the old school, dislikes it. They're like, this is not the D&D I want to play. I'm not going to do that. That's dumb. So Wizards of the Coast can say, well, we've changed this unofficial ruling that doesn't really exist, that just sort of everybody has agreed upon to be, hey, the game's supposed to be fun. If you're not having fun, talk about it, which is, as far as I was known, has always been the first rule. The game is supposed to be fun. If you're not having fun, talk about it. And they're changing it to, well, if one person's not having fun, they can sabotage the entire game. I think 90% of the player base is going to go, fuck you, Phil. Get out of here, Veruca. Shut up, Scotty. We just want to play stupid game about elves with sticks. So is this newsworthy? Is this something we should be upset about? Is it the shape of things to come of what we think D&D Studios is going to do to Wizards? I mean, I think it's safe to say that Wizards and D&D Studios are two separate entities. They haven't made it official, but if you listen to the last conversations with Perkins, who looks unbelievably unhappy to be there. And Crawford, they are two separate entities. They even have separate floors. Wizards of the Coast Magic the Gathering is not on the same floor as D&D Studios. So even if it hasn't been official, they are two separate entities. And Hasbro has the Wizards of the Coast Magic the Gathering. You need to make $1 billion by the end of 2023. And Dungeons and Dragons D&D Studios, you have to make $1 billion by the end of 2023. And D&D Branding, i.e. the movie, you have to make $1 billion by the end of 2023. And D&D Branding is like, done, made it. Even if we took a loss in the movie, we still made $1 billion. You're fine, or however much it is, a couple million. It's probably not $1 billion. D&D Magic, Wizards of the Coast Magic the Gathering is like, look, dude, even with the Pinkertons thing, we made money. I mean, we can't not make money. Literally, it's 90% profit for Magic the Gathering at this point in time. We don't do anything. We just change the art of the card and change the wording, but it's the fucking same card. We've come up with 27 different ways to say regeneration or dredge or graveyard control. And then D&D Studios is like, we managed to piss off an entire culture and we lost the company almost 100% in profits. But digital's up 40%. Yeah, that's not you, though. That's Monopoly. Is this the shape of things to come? Should we be upset about this? 90% of us don't play 5e. So what do we care? And for those who do play 5e, no 5e player I know is going to go, oh yeah, screw this. If Scott here says I'm upset about what just happened because my character had a bad thing happen to it, everybody else is going to go, let's talk about it after the game. And if you still want to come play, there's the door. Is this news? I don't know. Is Wizards of the Coast changing D&D? It's not Wizards of the Coast is changing D&D. It's D&D Studios. Is D&D 2024 going to be any better than D&D 2023? No, it's not. We already know it's a joke. We already know it's going to be a disaster. There's nothing that we have seen to make any of us feel positive. The only positive thing that's going to come out of D&D 2024 is the failure, and is the other companies stepping up and going, no, stop. And players around the world going, no, stop. I do not have the disposable income to keep doing this. And DM Kurt just did a video about this. You should go to DM Kurt's site and watch his video about 2024 and the recession and where people are actually going to go their money. Help DM Kurt with 1,000. Hit 1,000. And yeah, the disposable income in 2024 is not going to exist. People are not going to fork out the money Wizards of the Coast thinks they're going to fork out. So Wizards of the Coast can say whatever they want about Rule Zero. I don't think anybody's going to follow it. And more people are just going to go, you know what? I'm going to take my money elsewhere. Screw you, Wizards of the Coast. And hey, OGGM, stop pandering to Wizards of the Coast. And to which I'm going to say, hey, when somebody else does something newsworthy, I'll pander to them. You want me to pander to Kelsey Dion and Shadowdark instead? Because y'all shit on me when I did that. I'll happily do that instead. Anyways, that's it for the Tabletop role-playing game news on this super windy Monday. If you're wondering why I'm using this new icon, is because tonight we'll be doing the first episode of the podcast with me and Ironcaster, talking about all things giant stumpy robots, Super Sentai, Ultraman, Kamen Rider, and Tatsuko. It'll be about 5 p.m. my time, 7 p.m. Ironcaster's time. So if you want to just see two old men talk about Super Sentai for an hour, check us out. The link will be up as soon as I get it. Until then, that's all the Tabletop role-playing game news. Be careful out there because it's super windy, and I'll talk to you all later. Now I'm going to drop an X card and on this sandwich because it doesn't taste as good as I wanted. That didn't come out the way I wanted it to. That was in my mind. That was split. I'm going to go now.